Hi, welcome back to the Mom Files, Moments of Motherhood. Today, we want to just go ahead and jump right in. Let's talk about why we as moms can feel like our partners aren't doing enough and why our husbands, partners might not be stepping up the way we thought they would. Side note, this could obviously apply to anyone, but we are going to be specifically talking about like men and our husbands because that's what we have. So don't feel like we're just like singling any, like it is can apply to anybody, honestly.
Just unfortunate condition is.
Yeah, we happen to have to rag on men. No. But we totally get this and have felt this 100%. I know I have, like, we love our husbands. And again, we get if this isn't you, but for many of us, there is a disconnect for both parties when it comes to this. I think, especially in those early stages. So let's kind of get into it. We figured we kind of just start off by like when we're talking about this invisible load, what are we talking about? Because I know there's a bunch of different things that this could apply to, but I know there's like, I would say like two main buckets, which are like the physical help and then the emotional support.
Mhm.
And so, like, for me, when I think of physical help, it's kind of like what actually lightens our to do list. It's like tangible tasks. A great thing would be doing it without being asked, those
Mhm.
types of things. So, like, think of like cooking dinner or taking over the bedtime routine, folding and putting away laundry, running errands, just those like kind of basic physical. Obviously, I'm sure there's more
Mhm.
that could be included. And then when I think of emotional support, I think of like something that lightens your mental and emotional load. And obviously, this is something that both us and our partners do need to feel supported. Sometimes we just need someone that actually feels like they care about how we're feeling, especially like I said in those early days of motherhood, it can feel really lonely and isolating
Mhm.
in the newborn phase. And so sometimes we just need someone that feels like they care about how we feel. And so I think about, like, for example, like validating our feelings, acknowledging the invisible labor we carry. Like I said, like sometimes it is just being like, hey, I see you. I'm checking in regularly. Like there's a lot of things. So that's kind of what I'm thinking when it comes to physical and emotional help support type thing. Hav, do you have anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I think those are really good examples. I would also, I think, just like top of mind because of our last episode, we discussed about not apologizing for parenting in a certain way. And I think, I don't know if this is the same experience that other people had, but I feel as though a lot of times that I would thought that I had to explain myself or whatever, I was the one who was standing up for the parenting choices, or so it felt. So another form of labor can for emotional labor can also be taking on that mental and emotional load of talking to other people and helping other people understand parenting choices. That is if you care about explaining them. But yeah, I would add that to emotional, somebody to kind of like have your back in
Yeah.
a like loud way.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes it's not I think that's a great addition. It's not just when it comes to the mental, it's not just about, like, validating our like, those things are important is, like, it's not always just in the house that we
Mhm.
wanna feel mentally supported. We also wanna feel, like, supported out and
Yeah.
about, like yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and I think, it makes me think about our next kinda, like, talking point is just, like, why are moms especially prone to it?
Mhm.
Because it's like, I think these things that we are talking about is something that we as women feel more than men, and like I said, that doesn't mean they don't, but I
Right.
just think that we're more prone to it, and so, yeah, I think that's a good, like, starting point. I guess one thing that I think of right off the top of my head is, do you think women can be prone to it due to, like, cultural and societal norms? So I think this especially and I think it's just 'cause I'm on TikTok a lot and, like, that whole trad wife concept is keeps coming up, which is it's taking rise, which is totally understandable. And like we will probably, I've said many times or will say is like, that's great if that's for you. Like that's totally perfect if that fits you. If not, that totally
Right.
too. But I do think because of that, and like the societal expectation of women just tending to be the default parent and like
Mhm.
household managers and things like that. Even when both parents work, like both Hav and I are working from home moms. So like
Mhm.
just because we're home all the time with the kids doesn't mean that, yes, we obviously are with them, but that doesn't mean we're the only ones that are parenting.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think that is one reason that we are kind of prone to it, is just like that cultural societal expectation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also add too, um, I feel like it's because of the cultural expectation, it's other people put it on us. Like, I know for me, especially since I'm the one who brought up like being in public and wanting somebody to like verbally have your back, because the questions, at least I found, are always to me. They're never to
Right.
the father. They're always to the mom, being like, "What are you guys doing with this?" Or "Why are you doing this?" Or if there's some kind of behavior in public, it's like straight to the mom.
Yes.
So then dad is like, "Okay, well, they're asking you." But I'm like, "But
Mhm.
you're also." It's like somebody asked me if Tony was babysitting when I went out the other night, and I was like,
Is he parenting? Yes.
"Is he at home with his child?" Yes, we don't call that babysitting, that's his child, but, like, that is what society, at least where we are, says. So it's definitely, and then, I mean, I'm sure I definitely believe that scientifically, men and women's brains are wired a little bit differently, and
Mhm.
whether it's scientific or it's because of the way that we grew up in society, I do think there's just a little bit more thought and, like, pressure that we put on ourselves. At least in my relationship, there's a lot of, well, like, I just didn't think about it. I just didn't give it time. Like, why are you still thinking about that? Or like, just turn your brain off. Not to make it sound negative. It's not like he's like being rude or anything, but sometimes I'm like, that didn't bug you. And he's like, huh? I just didn't
Right.
think about it. So there could also be that like somewhat of a disconnect with the way that
Mhm.
our brains are wired.
Yeah, I think you brought up a couple good points. One of them is definitely when you said that things are directed towards, like, us. I
Hmm.
think that even, like you said, comes with, like, any type of behavior. "Oh, they're bad. What is you as a mom haven't been doing?" "Oh,
Hmm.
they're good." I mean, not even when you're good. You don't get credit when they're good. You only get attacked when they're bad, it seems
Oh,
like.
yeah.
It's not like they're like, "Oh, they're really excelling. Good job, mom." They're kinda like,
Right.
What's happening? What are they in?" And it's like, "Okay, like, maybe I did that."
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, as he gets compliments all the time, like people be like, "Oh wow, she's so well behaved," or "She's so smart," or whatever. And there is the rare few people that'll look at me, and but it's usually under their breath too, because they're giving me the acknowledgement that other people aren't giving, and they'll be like, "Oh, good job, mom," or like,
Mhm,
"Oh, I think they forget who she stays home with," and like
mhm.
stuff like that. Um, and it shouldn't be a surprise to get the compliment as being the person that stays at home. I also don't even give myself credit. I think it's definitely a societal thing where I'm like, "Oh, well, she's just so smart." And then sometimes I have to remind myself, like, who's cultivating that? Obviously,
Mhm.
Tony does too, but like, if we're
Right,
just
right.
talking about the amount of hours spent with her, like, yeah. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah, and I agree. It's not that they aren't, it's just it's interesting to me, it defaults to the moms of, like, "Oh, bad
Mhm.
behavior,"
Oh,
or,
yeah.
like and it's like, "Oh, wait, there's 2 parents here."
And it's
Or,
always, if
like,
you're a
good
loving
behavior.
parent, that's always, "Oh, they're so bad that you must let them do anything they want." Or, like, but I'm like, or, "Oh, you hug them too much." I'm like, "What do you—"
Yeah,
I
yeah.
digress. But yeah, there's always something to say.
Yeah, I'm definitely, especially now that I'm a parent, and this is kinda sidebar, but I'm like, I for sure stopped judging other people's, like, kids in quotes when they're bad,
Mhm.
because I'm like, that could be the one day they're acting up. Like, you don't
Yeah,
know again, you don't know what they're going through, you don't know what that day looked like, I'm not going to assume, like, "Oh, you give your kids too much hugs because they're having one meltdown." I'm like, "Maybe you said no to a kid," like, especially if you're in, like, the toddler like, they can have meltdowns for anything.
literally.
It's like to assume that, like yeah, I just find it interesting. It's just so quick to be like, "Oh, well, you're doing this." But I just found it interesting that I think, especially when they're doing good, it's like, "Oh, well, are they in school?" Like, "Oh, what" like,
Yeah,
it's just interesting. It feels like it negates what moms do, but, like, doesn't even mention the dads either, and I find that just
right.
really interesting.
Absolutely. I agree. It's so funny you said that with school, because I'm starting to get that, "Oh, like, what school is she in?" And I'm like, Well,
Mom school.
actually, this would have been the first year that she would have been eligible for
Mhm.
school because she's 3. But, like, yeah, I'm like, "No, she's at home with me."
Right. And I think you had made another good point, kind of going back to what you said earlier, is like sometimes, like when men or women, like our brains are just wired differently, like you said,
Mhm,
and sometimes there is a disconnect between our partners and us. And so, how
mhm,
can we bring them into that shift and change? Like Hav and I are thinking something different than our partners are, and so it's hard. Like I know now, like some things we want them to just intuitively know. Like,
mhm.
duh, like we're both parents, like us and our partners, we're both parents of the same child. Like we want them to be like thinking the same things we're thinking when it comes to
Right.
like taking care of them. But sometimes that just isn't the case, especially if they weren't around it growing up.
Right.
I think, we expect things, but at times there wasn't an example. Like I know for me, I had a really good example of parenting. My parents were very equal. They split things were like, you wouldn't I have a hard time seeing a bad example just because I had such a great one. However, I'm like, some people don't have that, and it is a
Mhm.
reminder that, like, sometimes the expectations and the communication is just different because, I mean, it's just not something they thought of because they don't experience it.
Yeah. Well, I think to tag on to that, I had a very different experience in my childhood. My parents were split, but both of my parents were as involved as they could be. And then I know for Tony, his mom did an amazing job, but she was the one taking on everything. So everything just looks so different.
Yes.
And I think too, to the part of communication, you can communicate about as much as you want to before you have a child. There is no possible way that you have thought of every little thing to communicate about. And then it's also very different once you're in it. Because I know
Mhm.
Tony and I had conversations about like, this is what we want our parenting style to look like. This is what we want. This is what we want coming into
Mhm.
parenthood. This is what we would like to be different from our children than was for us. Like this is how we want to communicate with them, stuff like that. And then you're in it, and every stage of childhood is so different. So you have to adjust based on that. So I think on the topic of communicating your needs, it really is like it has to be an ongoing conversation because things are so different and your feelings are so different. Like things that we thought we could face easily ended up being harder, and things that we thought were going to be so difficult to face are ending up to be easier. So I think it's just like a set your expectations together as much as you can, but also have the expectation that those expectations might be shattered.
Yeah, and that things might change. I think that's a good point, and I think to add on to that, it also might change, like Hoff said, with each phase, like newborn to,
Mm,
baby to toddler, etcetera, but it also can change if you're adding multiple kid or like another kid, or maybe you're like, there's so many reasons why those expectations can change, but I
mhm,
think Hoff makes a good point is, like, talking about it and trying to figure it out before you have can help, but if not, like, I know for me, like, for an example, somewhere where I think there was some invisible labor happening on my end is or in the earlier stages, and again, this is something that we had to communicate, but, like, in the earlier phase of, like, when Dash was home in the newborn phase, so, before Ty went back to work, he was super helpful at night, we'd both do, like, the nightly routines, things like that, and then he went back to work, and he was still helping, like, the nightly routines, but he wasn't getting up as much
mhm,
or which in the middle of the night, which one was kind of like I feel like we kind of agreed upon because he was going back to work, I
mhm.
wasn't. Like, you gotta kind of pick and choose, but at the same time, after a while, I was starting to feel depleted, and I just never had that conversation, so then all of a sudden, I'm feeling like my needs aren't being met, and he doesn't even realize it because,
Right.
he 1, I haven't said it, but 2, he's just, like, not, like, in it,
Mhm.
and I think yeah, and it can just be hard because then all of a sudden there's a disconnect because you're feeling one way, they're feeling another way. Plus, like I said, if he was getting up in the middle of the night, it also would have been hard and he would have been feeling a certain way because it's like he was working really long, laborious
Right.
hours. And so it's kind of one of those things where then we needed to sit down, have a conversation, and figure out, like, hey, I really need you to be like me staying, up in the night, but I just need some support. So maybe that meant like I got a nap in the day once he got
Mhm.
home to kind of balance it and he took over the load. So Yeah, I definitely think sometimes it can be easy to feel like they should be doing more, but
Mhm.
maybe it just means differently to, each of us,
Right.
and especially if you haven't communicated it.
And I think to add, sometimes your own feelings on things might contradict each other. Because I know especially in the newborn infant stage in nursing, there's honestly so much that, like, my partner couldn't do, and there
Right.
was a lot of things that I just wanted to do to, like, just get
Yeah.
it done, not fuss, not have to do a whole fight about, like, with the baby, like, we're gonna just nurse, we're not gonna fight for a bottle today, things like that. But then, like, I also wanted him to do it or, like, be there with me doing it, but he's also doing the things that he needs to do to take care of the house because I'm taking on this labor, so he's trying to take on a different labor, and then I'm getting in my head because I'm like, "Well, I want him to do this. I haven't communicated it, but he should just know." But also, every time he tries to like, "Well, I'll do this," I'm like, "Well, no, because I can just get it done." So
Right.
then it becomes like this contradictory thing where he's just doing everything that he thinks is right, but then without communication doesn't know that, like, maybe I just wanted you to sit with me today or, vice versa. And like as they get older, it kind of changes from there. But I think there are certain things where you're like, I just want you, like, you should just know. But
Yeah.
sometimes I think that's actually, you have to have a conversation and be like, these are the things that I kind of just like expect
Yeah.
you. Like on the physical thing, if there's dishes and you get home from work and I told you like today was a shit storm, like work was crazy and the child was a lot, then I shouldn't have to ask you like, "Hey, there's dishes. Can you do the dishes?"
Yes.
Like you should just come in and see. But to a point too, then like Tony's a lot better about putting his self self-care, I guess, first over like getting things done. So like if he comes home from a long day and he's tired and there's dishes in the sink, that can be done tomorrow. It's
Right.
We like to say that's a tomorrow problem in our
Yeah.
house, but that took me a very long time and it's still very hard for me because I work in the mess. I live in the mess. I don't leave the mess. So I think it's harder for me because I'm like, no, I just want the dishes done, but that's what I want. So I do need to communicate that to him a little bit.
For
Or
sure.
like making dinner. Like if he gets home from work, I'm like, I've had a shit day. Like I don't want to make dinner. But we've had a conversation now to where it's like, okay, if I tell you I don't want to make dinner, then you need to step up to the plate or we need to like go get food, but I don't want to be asked what we have in the fridge. Like figure it out. If I say I don't have the mental capacity to figure it out, just go figure it out. Don't ask me questions. Yeah. But like it has to be communicated, at least in our house, because at the end, I kind of look like a control freak. Like I buy the food. I know what's going to be cooked during the week. I have a plan. So he's not trying to mess that up. But in my head, I'm like, just do it, you know?
Honestly, I'm glad you added on about, like, the meal planning and stuff because I think that's an excellent point. It's like sometimes we do take on all these tasks because we want to in a sense or we feel the need to that we need to be doing it, and
Mm,
then we're like, shocked that no one wants to, like, butt in because
right.
you just took control over everything, and then it's like because I personally, when someone takes control of everything, I'm like, "Oh, let me just, like, go in and, like, pull something out," to like, and
Right.
so it's like, I think that's a good point. It's like, we all have such different perspectives and things that we think is important, especially like even you, like us and our partners. And like Hav said, like Tony and even Ty, they're better at realizing that maybe they're a little depleted and they need to take on like leave a task. And I think,
Mhm.
but it's hard for Hav and I because like Hav said, we work from home, we're living in the net or the mess. It can feel really overwhelming when you're just surrounded by it. But again, that's something that I think is a great time to kind of communicate like, hey, these are actually the areas that I need help in. And that's also a good time that, like Hoff said, maybe, for example, the dishes example, maybe that's when you say, like, hey, there's certain things though that, like, if we are both feeling depleted, it's okay for those to be dealt with like at another time.
Yeah.
And just, like accepting that because then you won't like at least for me I won't feel like they're just sitting there like festering like the dishes. It's like, okay, I know they'll get done tomorrow. That's just not a today problem, and I feel like it's
Mhm.
easier to put out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say is there's definitely certain tasks that, like dishes, like laundry, they're always going to be there. They're
Mhm.
never ending, so it's like it's so easy to get caught up in thinking that they're important, and they are
Right.
important tasks, but sometimes it is okay to make it a tomorrow's problem
Yeah.
because they're not like, sometimes I think we make them more serious than they need to be. It's like, it's
Absolutely.
okay if they sit for a minute, especially if you want to take a breather, do something as a family. It's like they'll still be there, I promise. And
Absolutely.
they'll never end.
Absolutely. Kind of segueing a little bit. But for those of us that are home full time with our children, whether we work from home or we're, quote, just stay at home moms, which not negating how hard that is on its own.
Because it is a job.
But when our partners are outside of the house all day and then they come home because our emotional needs and what we've been going through the whole day is very different than what they've been going through. So having an expectation that they come home and help you is 100% acceptable. And if for you that means when your husband comes home, maybe you have a list of things that like you want them to check on every day or whatnot. But I think communicating with them and letting them know at the end of the day is really like the only way to get them to be a part of it. And knowing it's like what we're going to say a million times, know your family, know your kid, know your spouse, know yourself as much as you can. Things will shift and things will change. But I know for us, having a set list of like chores does not work for us. We're very much the type of people that once you tell us like this is what you're supposed to do, it quickly becomes a chore. And me and Tony are not people who like, we like to give ourselves chores, but like what I'm trying to say is having the know what to expect. And I know for us, being home alone with Azzy all day during the day and working full time and taking care of the dogs. I forgot to mention in our intro, Aleea has 10 cats and a dog, and I have 2 dogs. But all that to say, like, so when he comes home, I have this list of things that I think that I need from him, but he also has had a draining day. So giving time for him to like chill out for a second and then, maybe today the dishes aren't actually bugging me, but he knows the type of person from communication now. And it's been a long time. We've been together for 10 years and this communication probably has happened too recently. But he knows now that when I work from home and I'm in home and like having the laundry piled up and the dishes piled up and like it really gets to me. So I don't expect him, because of the way that our relationship works, I don't expect him to come home and see the dishes and be like, I need to do the dishes. It'll literally be, sorry, I don't know if you can hear in the background, they're playing and Nazi screaming for me.
This is a mom podcast. Remember, we have children. Sorry, continue.
Fun fact, there are children. But for me, I'll literally say, hey, like, I would like you to take care of, or like I would really like the dishes to be taken care of today. Or just giving him like a glimpse of like, hey, like this needs to be done and I don't have the energy for it. But also then giving him freedom to say, I don't have energy either, because at the end of the day, are the dishes in the world? No. Now, what's not negotiable is taking care of Azzy and stuff like that. But like, it's definitely an ongoing thing. And I think getting them involved is a communication of also like what I felt I needed. We have conversations about what we've been through and respectfully what we felt was lacking from both of us. Because there are things that, I think I'm perfect. The newborn stage, I was doing everything and everything was perfect. Little did I know, he actually wanted to be involved more and he felt like he couldn't parent because I was doing everything. So, how can you turn that from being like a resentment to an inclusion, I guess?
I agree. It's so easy to let resentment build up on both sides when it doesn't feel like, you're, especially when you're not communicating.
Mm-hmm.
Which, side note, we will eventually do an episode with our husbands' perspectives on this, because I do think when it comes to communication, so it can just get misconstrued. And so it's like we have an opinion, but they have an opinion too. So just stay tuned for that. If you would like it sooner rather than later, let us know. But I think Hav makes a great point. It's like you could, like, with the newborn phase, it's like we feel overwhelmed because we're taking in all the duties without realizing like, hey, they actually did want to take some of the duties. You don't have to put it put it all on yourself. It's just, you need to get clear on what you need and be able to figure that out together, because it's
Right.
like you are a partnership. And so,
Well, and what do they say? Hindsight is 2020.
right.
So I do think that I am a strong believer in trying your best not to dwell on like things, especially if you are in a partnership I don't want to negate the partnerships where there really is a lack of understanding
Right.
between the partners. But if you are in a partnership, more so like Aleea and I are in, where they do want to be involved, but maybe don't know how to, they didn't see it growing up, or
Mhm.
they don't want to step on your toes, whatever the case may be. I think there is an importance to not dwell on it, but to say, hey, this is what happened in the past, and like, here's how we can move on better. I know Tony and I talking about having another kid, we're doing a lot of that and being like, hey, this is what we did with Azzy. This is what we would like to try to do. Keeping in mind, like I said, like that might blow up and it might not work for the next child in any form or shape. But go ahead and use that 2020 hindsight and all of the gore and all of the feelings that you felt, and now that you're hopefully in a position where, like, you can, like, calmly discuss those feelings, and I think Aleea and I will talk about it more, but, like, writing down your feelings in a book or,
Yeah.
like, a journal, like, I'm not a journaler, to be clear, but sometimes when I feel like that pent up, like, energy or resentment is coming up in me, I write it down to realize, like, a lot of it is me and my partner not actually trying not to help. Sometimes the invisible labor is put on myself, to be fair. And so then in a few days, then I can be like, "Hey, this is how I felt." I think how you communicate is really important. But go ahead and talk about, don't just talk about what you wanna see in the future, talk about, "Hey, the way that we just disciplined her about this certain thing, I don't think it worked like this." And we called each other out respectfully as much as we can and be like, "Hey, I think this didn't work so well. Maybe we can try this." But I think that works with the invisible labor too, because like, obviously, if they're not doing it, for the most part, they don't know that we want it done.
Right. I think, yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and I think it's like what Hav said, if you've already experienced a phase, like, maybe you're Hav and I, your kids are a little older, you're thinking about having a second one, I think it's a good point, don't dwell on what's happened, but, like, definitely communicate and figure out what you can maybe what you guys viewed differently at that time period. But also, if you haven't had a child yet, or this is something that you're about to go through and stuff, I think, um this is a good time to kinda have those hard conversations, like figuring out kind of, especially not in the heat of moment, but figuring out what it is that you potentially will be looking for, where, invisible labor might be met. And of course, if you haven't done it before, you don't know. You're not gonna
Right.
know all of it. But I'm like, just starting to get an idea like, "Hey, I know that I can take on more of the load at night." Maybe you're someone that realizes you guys will do switch shifts at night. Like, there's things that you can do. So just
Highly
sitting down.
recommend.
Yes. And so sitting down, figuring out, like, prioritizing what you maybe 10 things that you might need. Of course, start with 1 or 2, that would make the biggest difference.
Mhm.
Just kind of starting to realize where there might be some areas that are unmet, and
Yeah.
then also try not to, like, accuse each other. Like, it can be so easy to be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, you're not doing this." I know I can be quick to point fingers and whatnot, but sometimes it's, like, not doing that and rewording it to make it a little less attacky.
Yeah.
But again, if you are someone like us that maybe has had some moments of this invisible labor, it's a good time to sit, figure out why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and maybe there's some ways that you can communicate changing that.
Yeah. And I think to add on to that, especially if you are a new parent or planning on having a child or whatever, if it's too daunting to pick out, like, this is how we want to parent, or when this happens, this is what we want to do, I would like to also point out, in the moment,
Yeah.
it's like fight or flight when you're
Mhm.
in the moment of these really deep seated, like, the nights, another side, especially for the women, when your baby is newborn, an infant, your hormones are crazy, so the feeling of wanting to accuse is going to be stronger, and if you didn't experience that, I love that for you, but 90% of the mothers I talk to, we blame a lot, and sometimes it's very valid, but sometimes it's very much so our emotions are like, we're not able to fully clear our heads because of what our bodies are going through. But back to my point is that if it's too daunting to think of an exact thing to discuss how you want to handle it, I suggest discussing how you want to communicate to each other,
Mm, good
especially
point.
in the rough moments.
Mhm.
One that we didn't figure out until later in having Azzy, was tapping each other out and respectfully calling each other out when I'm doing bedtime and I am getting so frustrated and it's been an hour of trying to get her to sleep. Tony will tap me and be like, "Okay, I'm tapping in." Like, we're this is how we decided to call each other out and be like, "You need a break. You're" and during a tantrum, right? Like, now you're hyping it up. I'm calm, so I'm gonna tap you on the shoulder and you go ahead and leave the situation and I jump in. But sometimes communicating about how you're gonna communicate with each other when the emotions are really heightened will be the best start because then you can communicate, having
Mhm.
one moment of parenting where you feel like you didn't do your best with your child is not the end of the world. Like, grow from it and try something, they're not gonna remember it. But if you know how to communicate with your spouse, at least your partnership will be able to, like, hopefully pass some of that invisible labor so you can work together.
I think that is an excellent point because it's so true. Obviously, it's like what we said, you can't plan for even, like, remotely what you're going to experience and feeling. Maybe having some ideas on, like I said, like, maybe how you potentially wanna handle sleep or potentially but like Hav said, I think having those communication like, finding a way to communicate will help when you do get something that isn't a part of things that you've talked about. It's like,
Mhm,
okay, well, this is how we're gonna at least handle that situation. And I think it'll also help because that'll help you delegate. You
mhm,
know, it's like they'll realize it's like once they tap, for example, in Hob's situation, once they tap you on like Tony taps her on the shoulder, it's like, okay, I'm gonna pass this off to him. I'm not gonna be mad about it. Like he's seeing that I need to take a second and stuff. And then, like I said, you guys are a team. Like you're not like
mhm,
co-managing. So it's just his way of like, "Hey, it's my turn, like, let me help you." It's not like I think it's a good reminder, it's not they're not trying to be like, "Oh, you're a bad parent," or whatever, you're just having a moment, and it's like sometimes you need to pass
exactly.
the
I think
reins.
vice versa too, because I think especially just like an example of that, when we were in the newborn stage, Tony's not and I think science shows, I haven't found the exact research, but from what I've heard, typically, men don't do so well in the newborn stage, especially for those moms who are nursing and, like, co-sleeping and stuff, so it was hard for him to find where he fit in, so when he did try, and I would go in and be like, "It's not working, like, I'll take over," I didn't want it to be like, "You're not a good dad," more so
Right.
like, "I see you're trying your best, but it's stressing you out," and that stress, because we all do know scientifically the way that our emotions are gonna affect the newborn because they feed off of, like, our heart rhythm and stuff, but anyways, so not being like, "Hey, like, you suck at this," but being like, "Hey, like, you're thank you for trying and thank you for helping. I'm
Yes.
calm now. I can step back in," or whatever. Because I know that was, like, the few things that he tried after a certain point. We did switch shifts, so he had her at night up until, like, 4 months when he went back to work, but then after that, I got like, bedtime he could not do.
Right.
But he would try because he wanted to be involved, and a lot of times it ended up being, "Hey, I'm gonna tap back in. Like, thank you for getting her there. Honestly, she probably is falling asleep, but you look stressed, so we're gonna tap out."
And I will say, I also think it's like what Hav mentioned with the emotions. Like, I know for me, especially the early days of postpartum, like Huff said, we're all over the board. It can be easier to get angry and stuff. I also felt it was just the things I never said I would be like in motherhood. Like,
Yeah.
you always hear that, but I'm like, it was just like I was overwhelmed. I was nervous and scared and things like that. And so sometimes I think it's so quick to just be like, give me the baby or like take over a task or feel like
Mhm.
trying to do it all and then feeling overwhelmed, but it's for me at least, it was just a response, like, it was a way for me to kinda control, like, what
Yeah.
was happening, even though it was making me overwhelmed, overstimulated, and I like you said, like, there was a point where then it was harder to get Dash down to bed, and Ty would try, and then he wouldn't be able to, and then I would be flustered because,
Mhm.
and so it's I agree, I think it can be so easy to kinda get in like a cycle or like a rabbit hole without, like,
Right.
sometimes needing to take a step back and be
Well, and
like,
then, like, looking at that, then I know because I did the same thing. I'm like, "How much invisible labor did I force on myself because I
"Right,
didn't, like,
yes,
allow anything?" So those are things, like, talking about looking in hindsight that we're talking about for the next kid. It's easier for me now to be like, "Hey, this is what I need from you." to help with
Mhm.
invisible labor, but also then I know we talk about it all the time, and I remember sending you voice memos and being like, "If you have to ask me, or if I have to mentally think about it and plan it, then I'm just gonna do it because I've already done all the work." So,
Right.
whereas when you're not deep in the emotional aspect of it too, sometimes it's a little easier to be it's harder to become overstimulated when your mental is more calm. So, yeah, I'm like, it's a invisible labor, I think, will always be more so on the moms, but especially those of us who are like, let me just do it because if I think about it, then I've done the thinking, so let me just get it done. Because if I have to think about it and then explain it to you, I could just have it
Right.
done.
We don't wanna be nagging. I hate
Mm-mm.
nagging. Yeah, I agree, and I especially when I was so tired and, like, in the early stages, it is so easy, like, now that I feel like I'm getting more sleep and stuff, I'm like, it's a lot easier, like you said, to not feel like I need to just, like, take over or, like,
It's like the
whatnot, and so I think
patience.
yeah, right, and so I think this is such it's just a reminder, like, it's okay if your needs feel like they aren't being met and to
Mhm,
communicate that. It's
mhm.
not selfish to need time for yourself. So, it's not selfish to need time, away from everyone or to communicate why you need the extra support. It's actually I would say it's actually really brave and
Mhm,
important for your mental health because it can be hard to pass over the reins,
mhm.
especially when like, I mean, we love our kids, so it can just be hard, like, we're not perfect parents, but you're trying your best to do, you
Well, I
know
think that, like, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, a work-from-home mom, or you go to work, I think it could be said if you're a stay-at-home mom, you're with your kid all the time, it could be really hard to pass over the reins because you know what they want and what they need, and we're at a stage now where it's easier for Tony to, like, see that, but things change so fast. Like, he would literally used to be like, "Is she napping right now?" And I'd be like, "No, we switched to one nap." And he'd be like, "What? But he's not home." But then on the other end, I could definitely see, like, if I went into work, I would probably want to do everything when I got home because I'm missing that time
right,
with my child.
but then you're not in it, so it's hard to just take the reins, right.
Exactly. So it's like so yeah, the emotions are so all over the place with all of this, but I think in general, invisible labor sucks,
Mhm.
but like how do we get out of that shift of like or really get out of that loop, out of that rut where we feel like we're doing all of the load. And invisible labor too, I think we didn't discuss quite as deep into it, but is the planning out things like play dates and oh, she's going to grandma's house this weekend. Who packed the bag? Does she have? Are they in diapers? Are they not in diapers? Do they need toys? Do they need books? Like, what do they need? I know in my house, I'm usually the one to pack that stuff because I'm such a planner. So I'll usually have it packed 3 days in advance. So if I don't have it packed, Tony's kind of like, I just like expected you to do it because you always do it. And then I'm like, well, there you go, expecting things. But to be fair, if you logically think about it, I always have it planned. So those are things
Yep,
that I've kinda started being like, "Hey, like, you have to plan who's gonna watch her. You wanna go out, you figure out who's gonna watch her." It's really hard for me to step away,
right.
but I'm working on that myself. So, like, how do we get them involved? For me, it's being uncomfortable myself and communicating and telling him like, "Okay, this is great. You gotta pack the bag this weekend."
Yes, I think that's a great example is, like, sometimes we just have to pass over the reins a little bit and accept that it's not gonna be done the way we wanted it to, and that's okay, but, like, they're parents too, and they should be allowed to parent the way they wanna parent as well. Like, to
Exactly.
obviously an extent, like us to an extent, but, yeah, I think it's important to be able to give up a little control and things like that. So, if this is something that you are dealing with, we definitely recommend, first sitting down, thinking about what your needs potentially could be coming up or that you are experiencing if you are in the thick of it and communicate it. Sit down with your partner, have a conversation. Like Hav said, figure out even your communication style. Like if it's not like maybe you don't have certain things that you need, but it's like you're still feeling overstimulated, overwhelmed, and like you're needing some extra support, then talk about it. And then let us know if you want us to dive deeper on this discussion. I know we can definitely keep talking about it. Like, this is something that comes up. I mean, like we said, you have different phases of life, you enter different phases of parenting, and it's so easy to have new unmet needs or, things like that that can come up. So let us
Mhm.
know if that is something you would like us to discuss. And also, potentially another episode if this is something that you're curious. Maybe you have done all these things and they're still not listening or respecting, and
Uh,
you'd like to maybe have some points on that. So let us know about that. Hob, do you have any other?
I mean, just in general, remember, communicate, be kind, don't try not to accuse. And yeah, if you're in a relationship like we are and you want a male's perspective on invisible labor and why or why not more may be on the mom or what they saw,
Mhm.
let us know. I know Tony is more than happy to jump on and give some of his side.
Because I think it is so easy to only view it from our perspective, and our
Yeah.
perspective is important and the most important, but we can hear them out.
Right. No, I mean, literally the other day, I think Tony was like, "I think you did not like me when Azzy was little." And I literally was like, "What are you talking about? I love you." And he goes, "No, no, I know you love me, but like I really don't think you liked me."
Right.
And it just like makes you think that like the things that you were going through in your head, like if you don't communicate them to, they might be misconstrued because I'm like, I was stressed. And I honestly did not like anybody at the time. Like, I just didn't want to be bothered by anybody, but you're my partner and I shouldn't make you feel like that. Like, we should have just communicated. So, communication is key. It's really hard. Been with my man for 10 years and we're still figuring it out.
So, with that said, stick around because our next episode is all about finding time for self care. Because, knowing what to do is one thing, but making space for it is another. And so, we will dive very much into that topic next time. We so look forward to chatting with you then. Bye.
Bye.